Welcome back. We're going to be looking at the first house today and how it relates to general chart interpretation as well as the Vimshottari Nakshatra Dashas. I've decided to take a little bit different approach to this class than I had initially thought. What I'm going to do is, in each of the following videos, I'm going to do, say, the first house and the second house. That will be this video. And in the next class, I'm going to have examples illustrating the points that we've covered in the first and the second house videos. So these are going to be a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I think they're going to be helpful to let you see how it works out within a chart, within a horoscope. It'll be good to have some more teaching examples so it's not just all theory. So in this video, we're going to look at the first house, we're going to look at the second house. We're going to go over the principles as shared by Sarvarta Chintamani to give you some ideas of what to expect when you're considering the first and the second, or when you're in the Dasha of the first or second house Lord. So what does the first house represent? Well, it represents the body, the personality, the life path, and health. Which means when you go into a Dasha of the first Lord, these are going to be things that are going to be prime in your awareness. Now let's consider some principles from Sarvarta Chintamani. Number one, you want to know who are you friendly with in life. So if the ascendant Lord is friendly to another house Lord, typically you, the native, will be friendly towards the people represented by that house. If opposite, the opposite may be true. So let's consider a Gemini ascendant. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So what are the friends to Mercury? Well, Sun and Venus. Now let's look at Venus. Venus represents or rules over the fifth house from Gemini. And what does the fifth house represent? That can represent romantic interests, or that can represent one's children. So that will show that naturally, for a Gemini ascendant, one has the capacity to be friendly towards one's children. There's going to be a friendly nature in regards to that relationship. Now, of course, this does take into consideration the temporary friendships as well. So if you need some more information on that, please go back and review the video on dignity and planetary friendships. But overall, if you want to get a sense of who are you going to be close to, typically, all things being equal, then look at a planet's relationship to the Lord of the Ascendant. Meaning, is the planet in question, in the house that it rules, is it friendly towards the Ascendant Lord? That's the key. Now, principle number two. A planetary Lord in the first house, with or aspected by benefic planets, gives acquisitions of the indications of that house. So a planetary Lord in the first, with or aspected by a benefic, gives acquisition of the indications of that house. Consider the fourth Lord in the first. It can deal with home and vehicles, particularly if it's Venus for vehicles and Mars for property. So if that is in the first and it's associated with benefics, it can give acquisition of property or vehicles, particularly in the Dasha of the first Lord, and then the sub-cycle of the planet that we're discussing. So if it's, again, Mercury, well, actually, let's use Cancer ascendant. Let's say Venus is in Cancer, and Venus rules over the fourth house from Cancer. And let's say it's aspected by benefics. So in a Moon-Venus cycle, all things being equal, looking at it through the Vargas and matching it up with transits, then the person can acquire vehicles during that time period, because that's what the fourth house can represent, and that's what Venus represents. So we see confluence there. And if the planet in question is a benefic, then this can happen with ease, meaning maybe it's given to you, or maybe the way you come by it is effortless, because benefics give this effortlessly. If the Lagna Lord, or the Ascendant Lord, is also in the Lagna, chances of this acquisition are even greater. Why is that? Because you have a planet in the Lagna, in the area that deals with the body, you, your personality, which brings it into your life, close to your body. And now you have the Lagna, or the Ascendant Lord, there too. So those are two self factors coming into contact with the planetary Lord in question. So it makes it even stronger. So this also occurs if a house lord is placed in a Kendra and the other variables still hold true. Okay, so remember that. This also occurs if a house lord is placed in a Kendra and the other variables hold true. So being in a Kendra can give this same experience. Kendra is an angle, houses 1, 4, 7, and 10. If the Lord of the Ascendant is well placed and well supported, all other houses which are similarly well supported thrive, and negatively impacted houses may be dealt with more effectively. All right? Keep this in mind. And I've talked about this before. If the Ascendant Lord is strong and well supported, then all the other houses which are also strong and well supported thrive. And the negatively impacted houses, they are dealt with more effectively, which means the negativity isn't so bad. That's why the Ascendant is so important. That's why you can have a really trashed Ascendant, a lot of malefic influences, and then those other difficulties in the chart become so much greater. And that's like yourself. If you're stressed out and tired and weak, then the littlest things can just throw you off of your center. But if you're robust and strong and healthy, even the strongest things might not be able to destroy you. So working to strengthen that Ascendant Lord, is key. Similarly, if the Ascendant Lord is weak and afflicted by malefics or poorly situated, good houses may not be able to give their optimal results, and difficult houses may create greater stress. Same theory here, in that when you are weak and not happy and having a difficult time, you're not able to make the best of the good things within your life. So this is a very important principle. That's why if you're in the Dasha of the Ascendant, and you see other houses that are supported and strong and healthy, you might not predict that they're going to work as well. Why? Because the Ascendant Lord itself doesn't have the strength to tap into it, to benefit from it. So again, focus on strengthening the Ascendant at all costs, typically. A weak Lagna, and this is the Ascendant, or rising sign, a weak and troubled Lagna Lord may be supported by partners or spouse if the 7th Lord and the 7th house are supported by benefics and are well placed. Or similarly, by one's parents if the 9th house and 9th Lord are well situated and well placed. So this is another thing to consider. If the Lagna is weak, or if the Ascendant is weak, look to see the other houses. See which one of those are stronger. And if there's a person that's represented by that house, as we described here, the 7th is representative of the spouse. If that's strong, then the spouse can help the person achieve their goals. If the 9th house is strong, which represents a person's parents, maybe the parents help to support the individual, or you, whoever's chart we're talking about. So that can show an individual who might not have a lot of promise, but they find that their partner is always lifting them up, or their parents are always lifting them up, or 3rd house, their brothers are always lifting them up. So it's not always life is going to be terrible if your Ascendant's not in good shape. You can strengthen that by remedial measures. And you can rely upon those other people in your life who are strongly indicated based on houses represented by those people being strong. So these are a few things to consider to determine how is the 1st house Lord going to give its fruits. And these are just a few possibilities. The more skill you get with astrology, the more detail you get by studying astrology, you'll see how these principles expand and help you understand other aspects of the chart. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the 2nd house and principles of the 2nd house. I seem to have a lot more notes about this. So the 2nd house deals with what? Okay, if you said responsibilities, friends, early childhood, income, you're correct. You've studied well. So when you go into a 2nd house Lord period, or planets in the 2nd house, Those are the things that are going to take center stage within your life. Now, what are some principles? We have a few here. So, a weak second lord, aspected by malefics. And these are, when I say a weak lord aspected by malefics, I'm talking primarily about graha aspects, planetary aspects. And the Lagna lord placed in the 6th, 8th, or 12th, and aspected by malefics. This gives a hard life with little comfort. So more stress, more difficulty finding balance, a lot more expenses, or sudden changes or breaks, or debts to be paid off. So the person's going to have to work hard. The malefics are going to work them hard. So embracing a strong, disciplined work ethic will be helpful here. The second lord in the 3rd, in good dignity, and aspected by male planets. This gives leadership, inspiration, persuasive capacity. Why is this? Because the 3rd is a house of courage. The 2nd is a house of speech. When we have the house of speech, the lord of the house of speech in the 3rd, one is naturally inspiring to others, has leadership qualities to their speech, has a persuasive capacity. So if you go into a second lord Dasha, and that second lord is in the 3rd, this might be a time for leadership, inspiration, persuasive capacity. Point number 3. If the lord of the 2nd house from the Rashi ruled over by benefic in the Navamsha, let's start over here, just so we're clear on how to understand this. This is a long one. So if the lord of the 2nd house from the Rashi is ruled over by a benefic in the Navamsha, that means the second lord goes into the Navamsha in a benefic sign. The 2nd house lord from the Rashi is in good dignity throughout the Vargas, meaning that 2nd house lord in the Rashi is in good dignity throughout the Vargas. One has responsibility over many people. So there's two things here. The 2nd house lord needs to be in a benefic sign in the Navamsha. The 2nd house lord needs to be in good dignity throughout the majority of the Vargas. This can give responsibility over many people, which can be good for business, again, leadership roles, things of this nature. You need to write these things down because they are complicated. Principle number 4. Malefics in the 2nd house, and the 2nd lord aspected or associated with malefics. This gives difficulty meeting one's responsibilities. So we know that the 2nd house deals with responsibilities, income, resources. So having malefics in the 2nd house and the 2nd lord aspected by malefics, this can give difficulty meeting one's responsibilities. If those malefics are in good dignity, aspected by their friends, then that shows the person works hard to meet their responsibilities. If these malefics are in bad dignity and are in difficult Lajatati Avashtas, then that can show just general difficulty meeting one's responsibilities, and then we need to discuss some remedial measures. Okay, here's another lengthy one. A 2nd house and its lord aspected and associated with benefics. The native's livelihood typically supports many people. This is particularly true if the benefic moon is in the 2nd and the moon is in many good Vargas. So do you want to know, is your livelihood going to support many people? Maybe you're going to employ many people. Maybe you're going to contribute to society in a large way. Well, the 2nd house and its lord aspected and associated with benefics. 2nd house being Rashi aspected by benefics. 2nd house lord with or Graha aspected by benefics. You support many people. During the 2nd house lord Dasha is when this would come into play. And this will be particularly true if the moon is waxing in the 2nd house and the moon is in good dignity throughout many Vargas. And I like to use specifically up through the 30th Varga, the Trimsamsha. You writing this down? If not, rewind, take notes, write it down. Think about this. Contemplate how this might work, why this makes sense. What makes a good astrologer is thinking about these things, not just getting the information and trying to regurgitate it, but trying to consider when you go to sleep at night or before meditation. Okay, I read this, or I heard Ryan say this. What is the logic behind this? What is the reasoning behind this? And once you get the reasoning, many of these principles will make sense. They won't be so overwhelming for you. I'll speak into the second house, and it's the Lord. If Jupiter is involved, the support of others is greatly increased. Why? Because Jupiter helps everything grow. He's not an enemy to anyone or anything. Anything that he influences, he gives greater capacity to engage that aspect of your life. Now, the better the situation of the second house and the second lord, the better one uses accumulated wealth and resources. So, second house lord in good dignity, the second house lord in a trine, the second house lord with benefics, the second house lord supported by its friends. Learn the Lajatati Avashtas. Those will help you understand what its friends are. The better the support of that second house lord, the better you use your wealth and resources, the better anyone uses one's wealth and resources. A few more principles here. Consider the benefic and malefic nature of the ascendant, and the benefic and malefic influences on the ascendant lord to determine generosity or miserliness. So the more benefics influencing the ascendant lord, the more benefics influencing the ascendant, the more generous a person will be. The more malefics influencing these two things, the more miserly someone will be. And again, we're just talking about the ascendant here. We're not talking about the second lord. So we can see how you have to look at the whole chart again, right? Because it's not just how good is the second house and the second lord in regards to your generosity. It's what is the nature of the ascendant and the ascendant lord. The more malefic, the crueler, the more miserly. The more benefic, the more gentle, the more generous. And this takes us back to the ideas of Ishta and Kashta, which we will get into in 2016 as I start to go through Brihat Parashar Hora Shastra and get into the specifics of principles, such as Ishta and Kashta and many others. Now, a few more to go here. Actually, quite a few more. So we'll get as far as we can. And then I'll post the rest of these, again, on a blog post at AstroVedicAstrology.com so that you can consider them. So when the second lord and first lord are in conjunction or mutual aspect, the houses which they are situated in can indicate a source of income, right? So if we have the first and second in conjunction or mutual aspect, see what houses they go in. And then whatever those houses represent, that can show a source of income. Or the planet most strongly impacting both can give indications by natural karakaship or house rulership of where income comes from. And you have to consider which planet has greatest strength. Now, it helps to consider both natural karakaship and lordship. If the sun rules the ninth, one may gain from religion, or the preceptor, or father, or law, or even teaching. If the sun rules the 10th, one may gain from the father's business, government, or through one's own fame. So this is why as you explore a chart, you need to know what the houses represent, because that's going to help you understand what's given. And that's why in the Art and Science of Vedic Astrology Volume 2, when we go through the Bhava Yogas, I describe in the first introduction to the Bhava Yogas that you don't just read, okay, the ruler of the 11th and the 2nd. Works with currency, excellent language and speaking skills, pleasing voice, speaks for organizations, speaks for social ideals, political career. We need to understand, what is the planet that rules, the ruler of the 11th in the 2nd. What is that planet? Is it Mercury? Is it Venus? Is it Saturn? Well, sells products dealing with food, health, nutrition, and beauty. Well, that would make sense if it was the moon as the ruler of the 11th and the 2nd. Is a business owner. That would make sense if it was Mercury ruling the 11th and the 2nd. So you need to know, what do these planets mean to get a sense of the specifics of the Bhava Yogas. And it's explained in this particular principle. Okay, so one more. And this will be true for many of the planetary cycles in regards to house lords. Timing of benefits can be predicted when benefics transit supportive natal positions. When mutually supportive natal planets are activated by Dasha, or most certainly by both at once. This is a key principle. You have to look at the transits, and you have to look at the dashas together. If you're in a dasha that shows wealth from vehicles, well, that's going to be a trend. But if at the same time you have a transit with Jupiter going over your 4th house, or Jupiter ruling your 4th house going through your 2nd, these are going to support the timing of getting wealth through vehicles, or gains in this regard. So this is why I'd like to encourage you to please, if you can, take the Astrological Principles 1, 2, and 3 classes, the MP3 classes at AshevilleVedicAstrology.com, and consider then taking the Vimshottari Dasha classes, the MP3 classes there, because we look at really specific chart details about how to see how these things match up. That's when you're going to get good at prediction. That's when you're going to get good at understanding the trends of your life, when you start to match up the dashas with the transits, with the vargas. And this is going to be applicable throughout all of the house combinations that we go through in this particular class. But for now, study the principles we've already covered. Think about them. Try to consider how they make sense. Go to AshevilleVedicAstrology.com, and I'll put a link again at the bottom of this video with some more principles to consider. Find that blog post and think about those as well. This will start to get you in the process of becoming a good astrologer, understanding how astrology works. Think about them before you go to sleep at night. Think about them before meditation. Think about them on your lunch break. It'll become very clear because you'll start to get them infused in your consciousness. And then when you need them, you'll be looking at a chart and you'll say, okay, I remember this principle. I see it now in action. And then you'll give very good information to your clients, and you also get very good information for your family and for yourself. So we'll conclude here with the 1st and 2nd house Lord indications, the principles. And the next video we'll actually look at examples. So I'll pull up some example charts to illustrate these points. So thank you for tuning in, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.